Sometimes heroes don't wear uniforms. Sometimes they walk on four legs with silent eyes that see far more than we'll ever understand. That was Shadow, a black German shepherd with a coat like midnight and a stare that made grown men pause. Shadow wasn't just any dog. He had served on the front lines as a military canine, sniffing out danger, saving lives. But when the bullets stopped flying and the medals were handed out, Shadow was quietly retired. No fanfare, no final salute, just handed off to a man who didn't understand the storm behind those calm eyes. Daniel Reed, a 38-year-old mechanic, had never owned a dog in his life. He lived alone on the edge of a forgotten town, trying to outrun memories of a life that hadn't gone to plan. He didn't ask for Shadow, didn't even want him, but a favor to a brother in the army turned into a reluctant adoption. Shadow didn't bark, didn't beg. He just watched, always watching. He'd sit by the window for hours, scanning the horizon like the war had followed him home. At first, Daniel tried to ignore him. He'd throw down a bowl of kibble, maybe mutter a half-hearted good boy, and retreat to the garage. But one night, something changed. Daniel woke to a sound he hadn't heard in years. Not in that town, not in that house. It was the subtle creak of the back gate. He sat up, listened. Then he heard it again. Soft steps on dry leaves. He reached for the baseball bat near his bed, but before he could even stand, Shadow was already at the door, rigid, ears forward. No bark, no panic, just readiness. Daniel followed him through the dark kitchen, heart thudding. Shadow pushed the door open with his nose and stepped out into the black. The backyard was still, silent. Daniel squinted into the dark. Nothing. Then a whisper cut through the quiet. "You sure he lives alone?" Another voice replied, "Doesn't matter. We're not leaving without the keys." Daniel froze. There were people in his yard, thieves or worse. But Shadow didn't freeze. Without a single warning growl, he lunged into the darkness. There was a scream, a crash, and the sound of a man hitting the ground hard. Daniel flipped on the floodlight. What he saw stunned him. Shadow had one man pinned, his jaws locked around the attacker's forearm, not drawing blood, just holding, dominating. The other man had bolted through the side gate, limping, leaving his partner behind. Police later told Daniel that the two men had been part of a string of home invasions. Dangerous, armed, but they didn't get far this time, not past Shadow. After that night, something shifted in Daniel. He started spending time with Shadow, talking to him, walking him through the woods. At first it felt silly. Then it felt necessary. One afternoon, weeks later, Daniel noticed something odd. Shadow was pacing the edge of the property, stopping to sniff the fence near the shed. Not once, over and over. He dug at the base of the fence like something was there. When Daniel checked, he found a small pile of fresh cigarette butts, 6, maybe 7, still damp. Someone was watching them, standing there, smoking, waiting. Daniel installed cameras the next day. That night at 2:17 a.m., they caught a man in a hoodie creeping around the property. But what sent chills through Daniel was the way the man moved. Not like a burglar, like someone who knew the land, someone comfortable being there. He showed the footage to the police, but with no clear face, there wasn't much they could do. Daniel doubled up his locks, slept with one eye open. But he didn't need to. Shadow didn't sleep. One evening, Daniel was walking Shadow past the old Miller barn, a long abandoned property that no one ever touched. But Shadow stopped, stared, then growled. Low. Warning. He followed his gaze and saw movement, just a flicker, inside the barn. The door creaked as wind or something pushed it open. Daniel reached for his phone, but before he could dial, a voice called out from behind the barn. "Hey, you lost?" Daniel turned, startled, and saw a man walking toward him, mid-40s, greasy smile, calloused hands. But it was the eyes, empty, watching. Shadow stepped between them, body tense. The man looked at the dog and smirked. "Nice mutt. Dangerous?" Daniel forced a smile. Only if I tell him to be. The man nodded slowly. Good boy. Like he'd practiced the words, but never meant them. The man walked away, but the feeling lingered, like rot. That night Daniel couldn't sleep. He watched the barn from his back porch, his hand resting on Shadow's back. The dog didn't move, just watched. 3 nights later, the truth exploded. Daniel woke to sirens, fire trucks, smoke. The Miller barn was ablaze. The official story was an accident, maybe kids, maybe a lightning strike. But Daniel knew. He checked his cameras. They were wiped. Every last file. Gone. He called his brother, the one who'd arranged Shadow's adoption. I need to know more. About Shadow. What he did, who he found. There was silence. Then, Shadow was part of a team that uncovered a weapons smuggling ring. High-level stuff. Cartel connections. Some of the men went to prison. Some didn't. My blood ran cold. You think they tracked him? You said there was a man in your yard? I nodded slowly. Shadow doesn't forget a scent. The pieces clicked. The barn, the surveillance, the fires. They weren't after Daniel. They were after the dog. Revenge, cleanup, closure. But they underestimated the one thing Shadow was built for: protection. The next time they came, they brought fire again. This time to Daniel's house. Gasoline, a Molotov cocktail through the window. Daniel barely made it out. But Shadow, he had already dragged Daniel to the door before the glass even shattered. Already knew, already moving. Neighbors said they saw a black streak shoot through the flames toward the man who threw the bottle. By the time police arrived, Shadow had the man cornered. And this time, he didn't just hold. He bit, and he didn't stop until Daniel called him off. The story went viral. Retired K9 saves owner from arson attack. The footage spread. News anchors wept. Kids drew pictures of Shadow. Donations poured in to rebuild the house. But the most powerful moment came when Daniel stood before the camera, eyes red, voice raw. He said, I didn't rescue Shadow. He rescued me from danger, from isolation, from my own emptiness. This dog, he never stopped fighting, not in the war, not at home, not for me. That black German shepherd became a symbol, not just of loyalty, but of silent strength, of watching when no one else does, of love that doesn't ask for attention, only the chance to protect. And Daniel, he rebuilt the house with a porch just for Shadow. Some nights they sit there in silence, watching the dark, waiting, but never afraid. Not anymore. Because once you've been protected by something as fearless as Shadow, you realize you were never really alone. Not even in the shadows. This story wasn't just about a dog. It was about truth, loss, and justice. If you're still thinking about Ghost's eyes, subscribe now, because some stories aren't entertainment. They're reminders of what still matters.